Okay.
What is going on, everyone? I want to welcome Bridget Truxillo to the Mission Driven Made podcast. And thanks for being on the show. I'm excited that we're finally able to connect.
No, me too. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So before we get started with everything LEO in law and all the awesome stuff that you've done with all my guests, I really like to learn about the person a little bit first before we get into specific accomplishments. So if you could start, we'll start with your upbringing. And then if we can make our way, we'll say maybe into the teenage years or young adult before you decided to pursue your career in LEO.
Okay. Yes, people ask me where I'm from, and I say I'm from the South because I've lived lots of places. I was born in North Louisiana, sort of near Shreveport, if anybody knows where that is. And right before second grade, I don't remember my parents being married. I mean, I have a few vague memories, but right before second grade, my mom remarried and we moved to Missouri for a year. And then we moved to Oklahoma for less than a year. And then we moved to Arkansas for about 3 years. I think it was fourth through seventh, fourth, fifth, and sixth grade. And then seventh grade, we moved back to Louisiana. My grandfather was getting sick, and I can't remember. I think it was because he was getting sick, and then I don't know, he wanted to come home anyway. And so I moved back to North Louisiana, not the same town, but close. And thankfully it was close to where my dad lives. So, despite moving around a lot and having divorced parents, my dad always put forth a great deal of effort to see us and get us, and fought for custody more than once. So we spent every holiday, every summer with him. So we were very close. Very lucky that I have two very loving and attentive parents, which I think makes all the difference in the world.
Oh, yeah.
In raising kids, especially having been a cop. I can see what happens if you don't have that. So yeah, that brings me up to about high school. And then around that time, my mom got divorced again. She probably doesn't really like me to tell that part of the story, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
And because I saw her going through that, I would say a lot of things sort of sealed my personality around 16 years old. And I don't mean this negative towards my mom. I just remember thinking very distinctly when I was 16 years old, I will never be in a position where, and I'm not trying to be feminist about it, but just to be straight up about it, is that I remember thinking distinctly when I'm 16 years old, I will never be in a position where a man can ruin me ever. My mom's husband at the time had messed her up financially, and it took years to get out of that. And she's a teacher raising 3 kids on her own. And, teachers already don't make enough money. And so, thankfully we had grandparents close. Like I said, my dad's was close, but I just remember, that was, and then I also had a really crappy high school boyfriend who
Oh no.
also managed to instill the F all of you kind of mentality once I came out of that. Cause I was like, all right, like I'm going to be the type of chick who can stand on my own 2 feet. And then that definitely paved the way towards, what my career became.
And I think what you just said about standing on your own 2 feet, I feel like that makes for a better relationship anyway. If both people kind of have that mentality, I feel like they can love and serve each other better anyway.
I think so too. I definitely still think it's all about being confident in who you are and being able to know, like, someone doesn't have to need you to love you. I think that's hard. And I definitely went through a lot of that when I was in law enforcement. And maybe we can jump back and I'll go back. But when I was in law enforcement, I was single for most of it. And
yeah,
it was really hard to find, like, for people to understand who I was. And we can get into that. I guess we'll go back and then forward.
Yeah. And I'll just zoom into a few parts of your upbringing that you're talking about. And then we'll go into all your law enforcement stuff in just a moment. Out of all those places that you lived, was there somewhere that you enjoyed the most or liked? I asked because I flew out to Kansas City for a couple of days a few years ago, and I had this random thought that I would love living in the Midwest. And I don't know if that was some irrational thing. I was only there for a couple of days, but it seemed amazing there.
Yeah, I don't remember much about Missouri or Oklahoma. Literally, we didn't even live in Oklahoma for 12 months, but all of them were within about, and I could look at a map, they were all within about a 2-hour radius of each other. So
Oh, okay.
the most one that's the most that I remember the most was we lived in Siloam Springs, Arkansas, which is about 30 minutes outside of oh shoot, it's where the University of Arkansas is, and now my mind, I'm drawing a blank on the name of that city, but it's in the Ozark Mountains, and it's absolutely beautiful. The summers are
Yeah.
great. The fall is gorgeous. They do get snow. I mean, we definitely had like a snowstorm, missed like a week of snow school. I remember it being a week, maybe it wasn't, but I also remember that because I got suspended from school for lighting a firecracker in the band room. Just so happened to coincide with the snowstorm. I just
Oh,
talked
that's
to my
great.
sister the other day, which is not fair because two people in front of me tried to light the firecracker and it didn't go off. So I figured I'll do it. It doesn't even work anyway. Well, I lit the firecracker and it went off in my hand in the band room. So I got suspended for 2 days. So yeah, my parents were happy when I had kids because they're hoping that payback is they hope I get payback.
Oh, that's too funny.
Yeah.
And toward the end of high school, when you're coming out, did you start having an idea of what you wanted to do yet?
You know, yes, but I was gonna say I was about to say yes, and I was totally wrong, but I was not, and here's why. When I was finishing high school, the movie The Firm was huge with Tom Cruise, the John Grisham novel, and I read that novel and I thought that was cool, and I thought, well, good, I'll go be a tax attorney. Ugh, I mean, I'll be an attorney that practices tax law, and have now being an attorney, I can tell you that I would rather have you pull my fingernails off one at a time than to practice tax law. But I went into law, I went to the University of Florida. I left high school thinking I want to be an attorney. And then just totally, then like the real world started settling in, and not even knowing like you can be an attorney in more ways than just practicing tax law. That was not me at all. I definitely thought I wanted to do something that would be more active rather than an office job. But then years later, I ended up becoming an attorney. So, but if you would have told me that at 18, that I would become an attorney and I did that later. I finished when I was 32, I think, because I did law school in 2.5 years instead of 3. But yeah, I was 32. So yeah, many years later, I ended up becoming an attorney anyway, but
Yeah.
not the vision that I had at 18.
When you were going to Florida, it was Florida, correct? Your
University
college,
of Florida. Yeah.
University of Florida. Were you studying criminal justice at the time?
Mm-mm. Nobody in my family's ever been a cop, ever had anything to do with it. I don't even have very many even lawyers in my family. I'm trying to think. Anyway, I've taken the uncharted path in many ways. No, I went in thinking I was becoming an attorney. I don't remember what my original degree was, and then I switched it to engineering. So I went through 4 years of engineering classes before I realized I hated that and quit school and traveled to New Zealand by myself. I withdrew from school in my 4th year of engineering, and my dad didn't talk to me for almost a year. And then when I came back, I went in through agricultural. I was in agricultural and biological engineering and didn't want to do that, but wanted to get the degree, and ended up getting my degree in environmental horticulture because they accepted all of my math and science agriculture stuff as my electives. And so I only had to do 1 more year to graduate. So I have a bachelor's degree in environmental horticulture, little known fact.
You were probably one of the only people in LEO that, or in law enforcement, that had that type of a background, I bet.
I am sure I'm the only person that I ever knew of that, and have ever known of in law enforcement, that had a degree in horticulture. Yes.
You know what I think is so cool though? A lot of people in law enforcement, or a lot of my backgrounds in fire and EMS, people truly do come from all walks of life to get there. I feel like those careers, people are doing something beforehand. They might not necessarily love it too much, and then they find fire, EMS, police, maybe military or something. So that's something I always thought was pretty cool about all those careers.
Yeah, one of my closest friends that I still keep in, well, not we don't keep in touch as much as I wish, but she left the sheriff's office to go to the Secret Service. Now she's with an investigator with the EPA stationed in Hawaii. Poor thing. Um, she was, I think, philosophy. I think that was her degree. But there were most of the guys that we worked with didn't have a degree, but you don't have to have a degree to just have a different and interesting background. But when we came into the sheriff's office, when she and I did, they were making a big push to get more people with a college degree. What I think that does is what I think I know is that it just broadens people's horizons, broadens their view of the world. And then therefore, it's the reason why I always talk about why I think everybody should read, because it broadens your perspective, broadens what it expands how you're able to engage and relate with other people. And I think that significantly positively impacts how law enforcement would do their jobs if they read like that. Somebody's about to ring my doorbell.
That's okay. Oh, there it is.
No, and I'm going to ignore it because I'm working, but sorry about that.
Oh, you're good. You're good. Got to keep it entertaining, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you have your degree. What came next? Was it law enforcement from there? Did you go into your career field at all?
When I was at the University of Florida, I worked for a guy. He's became a mentor, still my mentor. We still keep in touch. I worked at the Gainesville Health and Fitness Center, and you think it's a gym. Yes, it's a gym, but my manager who at the time, and I was a supervisor at a health club, but they were teaching us personal leadership principles in a way that impacted the rest of my life. And I mean, it's still to this day one of the best gyms in the country. He left then to start his own company called O2B Kids. It's like the letter O, number 2B Kids. That they have many locations in Florida now. But I left to go help him open that. And at the same time, the whole time working for him is giving me this amazing personal leadership training. And so that has nothing to do with choosing law enforcement, but also at the time, I started around 16, starting to like go for a run or, do some exercise. So exercise has been a part of my life for a really long time. And it's when I was finishing college that I knew I didn't want to work in horticulture. Didn't really know what to do, but I would love to do something that required for me to be physically fit. And so that's sort of and I joke around sometimes and say I watched G.I. Jane, the movie with Demi Moore.
Yeah.
And thought I could just be the next Navy SEAL. I'm joking because that's a huge joke. But I did watch G.I. Jane around that time. But I wanted a job that required me to be physically fit. And I believe in the rule of law. I believe in law enforcement. I believe that it's important for society. And I just liked the idea that I could be able to contribute to that. So that's the week after I graduated University of Florida, I went to the police. I started the police academy.
Oh, it was just one after another like that.
It was that last semester at University of Florida. I knew I was going to need to find a job.
Yeah.
And I just didn't want it to be horticulture. And it was my mentor at the time, that same guy that just helped. Yeah. He was super good at helping people grow to be the best people they can be, even if it meant he was growing them to leave.
That's amazing. That's how every place or company or brand should be.
It really should, 100%.
Because if you leave, you're going to do nothing but talk really good things about where you just came from, which should do great things for the brand or company. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
And when you went into the academy, were you already hired when they put you through, or did you have to put yourself through an academy first before you got hired?
I planned on putting myself through, but when I was thinking about going to the police academy, I knew somebody who was at the sheriff's office, and I was going to do sheriff's office and the police department. I didn't have an allegiance to any of it.
Yeah.
And like I said, I didn't come from nobody in my family's ever been in law enforcement before. And so I did a couple ride-alongs at the sheriff's office, and that was eye-opening. And I can jump on my soapbox later. Anytime people ask me like, oh, hey, what do you think of what's happening in today's world? What's your opinion about, X thing that happened that the media is covering right now? I mean, my opinion is always, if you've before you start really having an opinion about what a law enforcement officer does, but for the George Floyd incident, because that was really extreme, that was obvious. But in most scenarios, before you have an opinion about what an officer does in the moment, you should go do no less than 2 ride-alongs and see, preferably on a weekend, preferably on Friday the 13th at night. So that's when you see what
Yeah.
the job is really like, because it's, I mean, crazy, 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 crazy. So anyway, I did the ride along, and I was getting ready to graduate from college, and they knew that. And so they, like I said, they were making a push to get more people with college degrees. And so they offered to pay me while I was in the academy. So I didn't even bother going to the police department, because the idea of being able to make money while, instead of purging it
Yeah.
while I wasn't making much money. I came out making $27,500 a year. But I thought it was awesome. So it didn't matter.
And how was your experience when you were going through anything particularly challenging that you found in the academy?
Not in the academy. The academy I thought was great. I mean, it started in June, ended, I think, early September. Took our test right after that. And even before my test came out, I don't know what the sheriff's office, I don't remember what they were having me doing, but they were paying me. So I don't know. I don't know what I was doing, but the academy itself, I mean, I loved it, just all the tactical training. I had never shot a gun before, even though I'm from a lot of small country towns. So the firearms was great, because I did exactly what they told me to do. And so I did well on the firearms because I didn't have any bad habits to break. Or the physical training, I mean, I loved that part of it. I actually got the highest fitness award at our academy,
Oh, awesome.
which was surprising because we had some strong fit dudes in there. But I also just think that's more of like, show up every day. And I did, and so those guys could have beat me in physical fitness if they had really tried, but they just didn't try as hard. So no, the academy I thought was great. I mean, I loved the defensive tactics training. I loved the firearms training. I could totally geek out. I mean, hence why I'm an attorney now on the constitutional law part of it. Cut my finger open the first time I ever tried to pull the trigger back, pull the slide back on my
Yeah.
gun first time. But anyway, I didn't find any part about the academy challenging. That came later when I joined the narcotics unit and the SWAT team, but we can get to that.
Oh, that's one of the parts of your story I'm most excited to hear about. But before that, you got out, and then did you have to do patrol for a certain amount of time first?
Went into patrol straight away, and I got lucky. We had 12-hour shifts, so we had the 7A to 7P, 3P to 3A, and then 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. So we had what we call that middle shift, the Bravo shift. And I wanted that. That was like the coolest. Like, you go to work at 3, you get off at 3. So you're in there amidst all the craziness, but then you get to go home and you don't have to stay up till the sun comes up.
Yeah.
I got the Bravo shift. It was awesome. And of course, I was also I wasn't always in like the middle of things. I was sometimes in very rural zones, because Alachua County, where I worked, which is University of Florida, is in Gainesville. Gainesville's in Alachua County, and Alachua County outside of Gainesville proper can be pretty rural, as are most cities and counties outside of in that area. It's what's called North Central Florida. But I loved it. I mean, and I knew early on that, well, and also going into law enforcement, is I thought I wanted to do federal law enforcement. So FBI, DEA, whatever. And I was using the sheriff's office as a stepping stone. And so I knew early on I wanted to get into like an investigative role. And I thought the narcotics unit sounded cool. So I would pull people over all the time just so I could try and find drugs in their car. Always legit stops, by the way. I didn't ever break the law. Because I wanted to show the people in the narcotics unit that that's what I wanted to do. So I was in patrol for about a year, maybe or so. And then I transferred I spent almost the rest of my time in undercover narcotics.
And how did you get from patrol to the narcotics unit? Was there a test? Was it just you apply? How did that work?
It was an interview. Whereas the SWAT team, which I did that right around the same time. I think they were both around November. October, November of 2001. So 9/11 happened. I was in patrol. I remember that I just posted a story about it on my blog about what I remember from that day. Because I had worked the night before, got off at 3 a.m., got home, probably didn't get in bed till about 4 after. So I was asleep and my boyfriend came in and said, a plane just hit the World Trade Center. Well, 2 months before that, I had gone to New York for the very first time with him for a friend's wedding, and we stayed at the Hilton connected to the Twin Towers.
Oh
And
my gosh.
the wedding reception was at the Windows of the World, which is the restaurant that was at the top of the World Trade Center. And we had just been there. I mean,
That was a week before, you said?
2 months before. It gives me chills in the back of my head, actually, when I talk about that. Because
I just got those too.
There, we were, we stayed there. I can vividly remember having a beer in the Irish bar that was part of the Hilton that was connected to the Twin Towers. I mean, we were right there. And so he came in and he said, a plane just hit the towers. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? I have to work tonight. Why are you waking me up? He says, no, like, it's not an accident. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And that was, so probably the second plane hit, and then the towers came down right after that. Well, then I went to work that day, patrol, and we went in, and like that, at that point that day, nobody knew if there was going to be more attacks after that. They didn't know if they were going to hit other cities or, like they're not going to hit Gainesville necessarily, but I mean, it could be Jacksonville or Miami or Orlando or Tampa. I mean, we didn't know. So we came to work and they said, go to your calls if you get a call, but otherwise just be available. And so we were just kind of just sitting around all day. It was a very quiet, the whole world was quiet that day. Even the crazy weren't as crazy that day. I don't know. But anyway, so that was September. And so then I probably interviewed October. I think I tried out for SWAT in November, but the narcotics unit was an interview. I mean, just why do I want to do this? What are my goals? How long do I want to be at the sheriff's office? Blah, blah, blah.
And I love stories. I don't know what you're allowed to say or not. Is there any cool stories from training or calls you went on once you're in that unit that you could talk about?
Narcotics unit?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Gosh, it's like the best stories come to me when nobody's asking me for a story. Gosh. I mean, the way we would work most of the time is you get a snitch somehow. You're not supposed to call them that. They're confidential informants, but you'd get a CI who either is a good person from the neighborhood that wants to drive the drugs out, or some of my best CIs were drug addicts who were trying to kick the habit, and so they wanted to get their dealer busted so that they couldn't go to that dealer anymore. Well, there's more dealers. So, but I had this one girl, I don't know, like sad stories too. Like one girl, she was really young. I don't know if she was on meth or crack because she wasn't on it at the time, but people who have been on meth or I guess crack too early. I mean, this girl, like the black of your shirt, her teeth starting at the gum line were black. I don't know if you ever saw that when you were on the job. She would smile, and I the first time she smiled, I was like I couldn't stop. But she was happy, and she would flirt with the guys on the narcotics unit with me. And one of the guys, his name Eric, unfortunately he passed away, massive heart attack while running several years ago. But she flirted with Eric like crazy, and she'd laugh because she was, flirty, and all her black teeth. But she helped us bust people. Her whole family were drug addicts. It's hard to, I hate when if this happens, I can't think of a story. I can think of a good Friday the 13th story from SWAT Team.
Let's hear it.
So, and we worked hand in hand. So our SWAT team wasn't what you call a full-time team. We were what you call a call-out team, meaning we all had like our regular day job. Like I was in narcotics. Some of them were in patrol. Some of them were detectives. But then when we had a call-out, our beeper, we had beepers back then, would go off, and we would show up for whatever the call was. Or when I was on the narcotics unit and we'd get search warrants, the SWAT team always executed the search warrant. So, if you have to go break somebody's door down because you've bought drugs from their house, the SWAT team would do that, not the narcotics unit. Now, almost all of the narcotics unit was SWAT teams. So, but you don't want to do that with 3 people. You want to do it with 20 people. So right. 22 people, I think so. We had 22 or 24, doesn't matter. Anyway, so one day it was a Friday the 13th. And we were staging for a search warrant. So we were in the neighborhood where we were going to be hitting a condo. downstairs unit. I can picture it. It was like kind of backed up on a creek. And anyway, so we're staging in like an office parking lot, like a couple blocks away where they can't see us. And all of a sudden on the radio, we hear potential hostage situation happening like 3 blocks the other way. Well, we get on the radio and say, hey, we're like, normally we're a call out team. Like if you need us to show up for that, it's going to take a couple hours for us to get there. But we're right there. We have our armored vehicle there. We have all our gear. We're all suited up and we say, hey, we're actually, and they don't, like dispatch doesn't know, like somebody might know we're there, but regular patrol won't know where we are when we're doing that. So we're staging, and all of a sudden we get up on, somebody on the radio, my lieutenant pops up and says, hey, all the SWAT teams right here will handle the hostage call. So we leave where we're staging for our search warrant, go over, and it turns out it was a mentally impaired person, had just barricaded himself into a bathroom. By the time we get there, he was kind of coming out. We get out, they got the shields out there. We're about to go in and they say, no, it's okay. You're good. So, okay. So we're getting back in our vehicles and we're getting ready to go back to the staging area. Well, then we get a call for another area about 5 minutes away, that there's a robbery this is a Friday afternoon around 4 or 5 o'clock, a robbery in process at the Outback Steakhouse. And so we're like, holy crap, this can't, again, we're 5 minutes away. And then you think that, in Gainesville, on a Friday afternoon at 4 or 5 o'clock, the happy hour is packed. And we're all thinking, holy shnikes. So we go, and this is the one and only time that I was the person right behind the 2 shield guys on the entry team. So you have 2 lines of guys and me. I say guys because I was the only girl. And I was going to be the flashbang person. And because we didn't need a battering ram in that situation. So we're literally we have 2 lines of highly, tactically equipped people about to enter the Outback Steakhouse on a Friday afternoon at 5 o'clock. And then we hear, no, it's not the Outback Steakhouse. It's the jewelry store next door to the Outback Steakhouse. Oh. So this is me, literally, what I remember from that is me grabbing the vests of the guys in front of me and saying, stop, and trying to steer. So we all had to just steer left and go over one storefront. We barely missed the guy. He had a trail of jewelry running out the back door of that. But so then that was over. We averted clearing the Outback Steakhouse and scaring, 200 people on a Friday afternoon. And then we get back on our vehicle, go back to our staging area, execute the search warrant, find a whole bunch of cocaine in this guy's house, a whole bunch. I'm not talking about several kilos, but enough cocaine for that guy to be in a lot of trouble. And then we go home. So that was a Friday the 13th on a sunny fall afternoon in Gainesville, Florida.
Was it an error with dispatch when you guys went to the Outback Steakhouse? Is that why you went there? Did they forget to write
jewelry store next to the Outback, and then all anybody heard was Outback?
Oh, gotcha.
But thankfully, that could have been. First of all, that's what we train for, and this is sort of what I base my training, everything I do in my business, which is wellness training and legal support. Is I teach people, I take what I learned from SWAT Team, which is you train and train and train and train so that when you need to use whatever skill that is, you can use it without having to think about it.
Yep.
Well, I talk about that with wellness training. So when I say train for your wellness, I'm talking about meditate every day, read every day, do some exercise every day, try and focus on your nutrition every day, because then all those benefits then you help contribute to your happiness every day. Well, but going back to what SWAT training is, the idea of having to find a bad guy in a very packed Outback Steakhouse on a Friday afternoon is the equivalent of an active shooter in a school situation. All of a sudden you have all these people running around all the time. How are you going to find the bad guy? Well, the way you do that is you train for it over and over and over, and everybody has a role and everybody knows how to do that. And so, and on the one hand, you think, holy crap, that could have gone so bad on clearing the Outback Steakhouse. And oh my gosh, how would we even done that? But we would have done it. We did without even thinking about it. We were about to enter that Outback Steakhouse the way we would an active shooter situation at a school. Because back then we trained, and they probably still do, I just don't do it anymore. Back then, everybody remembers Columbine. My time in law enforcement was not that much longer after the horrific school shooting at Columbine High School in Colorado. And so we trained a lot on active shooter situations like that. So we would have done it, but it would have been, sheriff might have gotten a few calls if we would have done that.
And are all of you on the way to these calls and these situations like pretty amped up and excited, or what's the mood when you guys are in all these armored
Like
vehicles?
up, and then right before you go in, it gets like,
Yeah,
okay, game time.
Love it, love it. And how long did you do that for with SWAT?
A little over 2.5 years, or yeah, because I tried out in like October, November. They put me on the team a month or two later, and then I left the sheriff's office. Let's see, when did I leave? This December. I guess about 2.5 years. I don't know, 2.5 years, let's say.
And then after that, was that the end of your law enforcement career after the 2.5 years, or what happened after that?
So being the only female on the SWAT team was not always fun. And learned a lot about what the personalities that are present in a law enforcement type job. And also, because I was in the narcotics unit, I met a lot of federal investigators. So either we would have a case that we would pass on to the feds, or we surprisingly worked a lot with postal investigators. So you'd be surprised all the illegal stuff people put in the mail, and the ways at which the US government, the Postal Service has of finding those things. So somebody would ship a package like drugs, and then they would call us to say, hey, we found this package. And then we would then go like basically deliver it, and then arrest the people for accepting delivery. One of my favorites was somebody had mailed a bunch of weed. This was back when weed was much more illegal than it is now. And they had covered the package in mustard and then wrapped that with something else, because they had read somewhere that if you cover it in mustard, the dogs can't smell the weed, which is not true because the dogs found the weed. Anyway, so I met a lot of federal investigators. And one of the things I realized towards when my peak frustration with my team was that a lot of the stuff I was dealing with on the local level wasn't going to change at the federal level. And was also maybe even kind of fearful that the egos involved with that would just be much bigger. And no disrespect to anybody at the federal level, I'm just saying from my perspective, and I got so fed up with what was happening between the narcotics unit and the SWAT team, because they're the same people. My sergeant in the narcotics unit was one of the team captains on SWAT. My lieutenant in narcotics was the SWAT team commander. So it was almost all the same. And I decided, there's a couple of events that happened that one day I said, you know what, I do not need to spend the rest of my life trying to convince anybody that I can do this job. I've already done that. It hasn't mattered. I can do something else. And I knew my something else would be someday. Well, it took me a while. I didn't know right away that I wanted to do law school, but I did. And then I just knew, leaving the sheriff's office, that I wanted to someday give back to law enforcement. And I knew that by becoming an attorney, I could do that in a really beneficial way. So that's what I did.
And when you left, was it right to school again?
Yes. Well, yes and no. So you have to go back. So I had about 3 months, maybe, from when I left the narcotics unit and the SWAT team at the exact same time. I went to my captain's office one day because he knew that it was getting bad. I went to him one day and I said, I want off SWAT team and I want off narcotics unit yesterday. And I don't want to work nights anymore. I want to be on day shift patrol, and I want to just sit there and everybody leave me alone until I go to law school. And he said, okay, because he had actually started telling them to leave me alone, like lay off of her, like stop. And so I had about 3 months before I left. I left in December of 2004. And I started law school in August of 2005. I was going to do that. Like I said, I was single and had nothing to my name, really. I didn't own a house or whatever. And my brother was in Costa Rica at the time. And I was going to go spend 4 months in Costa Rica with him, because I thought, when will I ever get to do this again? That did not happen. My brother ended up getting really sick in Costa Rica, almost died, came home. But I lived in Key West for 4 months. So that was cool. My dad lived in the Florida Keys at the time. And so, long story short, I lived in Key West for a little bit, and then a couple months with my dad, and then started law school.
And law school, I don't know much about it, but I just picture you're drinking from a fire hose for a couple of years. Is that kind of
awful?
It's terrible. Yeah, tell us about it.
It's absolutely awful. you learn, a whole semester's worth of information in one test. And there's nothing in between. There's a couple like legal writing courses where you have to turn some state stuff in as you go. But other than that, you spend a whole semester learning everything you can about a whole legal topic that our whole country is based on. And then you have one test on it. And it's overwhelming. That first semester was absolutely brutal because you just don't know if you're doing enough. And I knew I also had never worked as hard in school. That was the benefit of me not doing it right after college, because I was able to skate by with okay grades without having to work too hard for it for high school and most of college. But then when I went to law school, I just knew, first of all, they also gave me a partial scholarship, the school where I went to, and I didn't want to lose that because I went to a private Catholic law school, not a state law school. So it was like 3 times the cost. And I didn't want to lose that scholarship. And I just wanted to get the F out. Like I said, I did it in 2.5 years instead of 3. I started law school when I was 30. And so I wasn't like the 22, 23-year-olds who just came out of college and like, hey, just more school. Not me. Like, this is debt I am creating, and I want to get out and start dealing with that debt. So it was intense. And then the first semester is awful. Second semester is just not quite as bad, but still you one test at the end of a whole semester. And then the next 2 years, it's still the same. You're just more used to it. But it was law school's not fun.
And the whole time, are they telling you you need to hit this grade on this test, or they fail you out? They try to weed people out, or what is that like?
No, a lot of people do stop after the first semester. Because they go through the first semester and they think they're studying enough, and then they get their grades back and they're poor, low grades. And I definitely had a couple of people that I liked a lot my first semester of law school that didn't come back after the first semester because their grades were low. And I guess for whatever reason, they decided it wasn't for them. And they don't try and intentionally weed you out, but it's that, they have a specific method they teach in law school. It's the IRAC, an issue, rule, analysis, conclusion. And they really teach you to start to think about legal issues that way. They definitely, like stuff you see in movies, they call you out in class, and you don't, no matter what, you don't want to be the one that gets called out, because you better have read the material, because if they don't, they will embarrass you. I never had a professor that made somebody leave if they didn't know the answer, but I'll never forget, there was a girl, and I think it was our second semester, so it wasn't the first, and she got called on, I think it was in torts class, and tort classes like negligence cases are like just not criminal law. It's like, it's not things you get found guilty for, it's things you're found liable for, which don't hold on to that information. It's not important. But she got called on, or no, maybe it was, anyway, doesn't matter. There's a class and she got called on, and her response was, this is like, I'm not making this up, this is how she said this. This is like really hard, and you guys give us a lot of work.
Oh, no.
All in class are like, oh my God, I can't believe she just said that. I can't believe she didn't get asked to leave, but she certainly got called on many times after that to be prepared.
Oh man, I can't even imagine saying that with some of my previous jobs. And
oh my gosh, this is like really hard, and you guys give us a lot of work. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it was crazy.
So after you finished a few years of that craziness, did you go right into what you're doing now, or what happened after that?
No, so in the midst of starting law school, I met my now husband. Actually, the summer, my family, my mom moved to Texas right when I finished high school. My sister somehow managed to be in Texas. So I came the summer before I started law school, I came to Texas. I had no intention of ever living in Texas. I didn't live there. She moved there after I finished high school. So I finished high school in Louisiana, went to school in Florida. I intended to live the rest of my life in Florida, and came to visit my mom and my sister in the summer of 2005, and was introduced to this guy, Dave. And, I had no intention of dating him. And I was like, oh, he's cute. Oh, well. And then went and started law school. And then we just kept in touch. And then, anyway, ended up moving to Texas when I finished law school for him. So we ended up dating the whole time I was there. And And so moved to Houston, Texas. And Texas is, I know a lot of states can say this, but Texas is a very egocentric place. And I don't say that in a negative way. It's just that if you didn't go to a Texas school, or if you don't have know people in Texas, then it can be hard to find a job. So my very first job, well, I had like, for a couple months, I worked for this guy who thought he was like God's gift to trial lawyers, but nobody had ever heard of him before. And then that was not fun, but it was a paycheck. And then I transitioned to the job that I had for almost 13 years, which was asbestos litigation. And again, I got a job that could pay my bills and had no idea what asbestos even was. And then I did that for the next 13 years. Although I kept trying to get out of it, about 2 years in, I knew it's not what I wanted to do. But it was paying the bills and it was decent money. And then a couple of years after moving to Texas, my husband's job transferred us to New York City, and the law firm I worked for had an office in New York City. So that's one of the reasons we could go, is that we knew we would both be able to make money, because New York, because if we were going to do it, we were going to go in or go, all in or go home, is that we lived in Manhattan. And so we need to be able to afford to live in Manhattan. And don't get me wrong, it was a tiny apartment, but but I just kept trying to get out. And because I knew what I wanted to do is something that involved investigative work or law enforcement work, but I didn't want to work at a DA's office, or I definitely didn't want to be a public defender or a criminal defense lawyer, because I knew right away that I worked too hard to arrest them. I did not, and then I therefore did not want to be one of the people that helped get them off. Definitely didn't want to ever be an attorney that tried to make cops look bad. I know not all cops are perfect, but
Yeah.
it's not my job to go out there and try and tear them apart. So anyway, asbestos litigation. Then my husband's job moved us back to Houston. And again, I could get a job in asbestos litigation. But then finally, I just was so miserable. And eventually, as I kept kind of waiting to see if a job that I wanted would just appear and magically fall out of the sky.
Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, and it didn't. So about 2 years ago, I was like, that, enough is enough. Like, I know I want to do work with law enforcement. Nothing that I was envisioning existed. And so I just had to create it myself, which is what I'm doing now.
Yeah, it's so tough. I had this conversation with one of my buddies yesterday. You're somewhere, you're successful, it's paying the bills, maybe you're making good money, but you just don't feel fulfilled at all. Literally just had that conversation yesterday.
Yeah, I thought that I must be a stupid attorney. I thought, maybe I'm not cut out for this, which I think is ridiculous. If I can do SWAT team, I feel like I could do anything. But I was just so unhappy. And then think like, well, what's the point of this? Or if I'm doing something that's taking me away from my kids, then it has to be something that matters. And not that the work I did, so asbestos litigation means like all the commercials you see on TV. So my clients were exposed to asbestos and they died or well, especially if you have mesothelioma. Nobody survives mesothelioma. It is a death sentence. So all my clients were either already dead or about to die. And then you had to deal with that. And so I felt like there was some honor in that, in the sense that I was able to get money for the family. You can't bring a family member back, but at least I can try and help them live maybe an easier life. And unfortunately, money does really bad things to people. But at least, so I had at least that part of what I was doing, is like, okay, at least maybe I'm trying to help these families. But then also these families it would just having the money would destroy them. But anyway, that just wasn't enough. It was what I call the golden handcuffs, is that making enough to keep doing it. But sometimes I describe it as it's like living in a Brillo pad. Like, imagine if you hold onto a Brillo pad and just try and rip it in half. You can't. There's too much intertwined in there. But if you just start pulling a piece off that Brillo pad, you can unravel the whole thing. And I felt like when I was trying to be like a lawyer's lawyer, like be a law firm and do that kind of work, I felt like I was living in a Brillo pad and that it was just wearing me away. And then finally I started to say, maybe this is okay. I don't need to do this. I don't really need, the money is not all that important. It is. I mean, don't get me wrong. We need money to live, but it's when I started to finally look at, okay, I don't really shake off these golden handcuffs. I started to pull those, unravel that Brillo pad to find happiness, which is, it's hard to do, but it's so worth it. That's where I'm at now.
So tell us about protective wellness. I'm really looking forward to hearing about this and what you're doing.
Thank you. Yes. So the business that I started when I, finally shook off those golden handcuffs is called Protective Wellness. What I knew I always wanted to do is I knew that I could give back. Number one, because I've done the job. And so even before public opinion has become, I feel like public opinion might be on the way back up a little bit. But last year, it was so bad. And even before that, when I left the sheriff's office, I was at the point where I knew, and I think it happens to anybody when you somewhere between the probably closer to the 5-year mark, but somewhere between the 3 and 5-year mark, you start to realize everything the job is doing to you.
Yep.
It takes so much, you see so much bad.
Yep.
And that's what the job is. Your job is to run to the bad, to handle the bad, that we protect society. And that takes a toll. I mean, I've seen the brain matter of a 2-year-old. Like, I can never unsee that. I will never unsee that mom knowing that her son, I can't, that stuff never leaves. And those were things I would consider like major traumas. But then law enforcement is all these micro traumas all the time, or first responders in general. You just see the hard all the time, and destruction and hurt and pain and danger. And so I knew when I left the sheriff's office that part's always there. It's just harder now because then too many people have a negative opinion of law enforcement. But just to put that, I mean, that's always been there. Well, I remember after 9/11, sitting in my patrol car, maybe not right that day, but right after, and a fire truck drives by and people would stop what they were doing and clap for the firefighters. And I do too. I think firefighters are awesome. What kid doesn't love to see a firefighter or a fire truck or a firehouse? And then I would get dispatched to a call and somebody would open the door and they'd say, "What the fuck do you want?" Sorry.
Oh, you're good. You're good.
And, I'd be like, "Oh, great. You called me. Didn't somebody here call 911? What can I do for you?" It's just that, I would be practical and was spit at, and so you're just treated, I feel like it's like from all fronts, you're treated poorly. So I knew that. And I know, I'm an attorney. So there's a lot of different ways. I spent 13 years as a plaintiff's lawyer. And a lot of what law enforcement officers experience from a legal perspective is from a plaintiff's, well, that's not true. You have to, if you're being sued, you're on the defense side, but still that's civil litigation. I did that for, I've been doing it for over 13 years. And so I know I can help cops deal with some of the legal consequences of the job. And then because I can help with that, I tell people, say this all the time, I consider legal support to be a wellness tool, because if you're worried about something on the job and I can help you with that worry, then that's one less thing to interfere with your happiness. And there's a lot of ways to worry about the job from a law, as law enforcement, or even just the stress of it all, and like how much that impacts when you go home. And it's hard. It's definitely a job that it's really hard to leave it at the end of the shift.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Protective Wellness is, to just describe what it offers, it's a membership-based program that offers wellness training and legal support and community. Those are the main 3 things. The 3 things that are considered to be so important. Wellness training is every single month you get 1 week, you get a live training with me on a different topic related to wellness. The next week you get a legal training video from me that I consider something that would help you feel more comfortable with the job. The next week you get an email from me that continually reminds us to be training in focusing on our wellness. And then the 4th week you get a sort of like a check-in. How's it doing? How's it going? What worked? What didn't? Check in with the community. And then a community board, which to me is so important because sometimes you want to be able to say things either anonymously outside of your department because you don't want something to be held. Unfortunately, there could be a trust issue between the officers and their department, and you want to be able to talk freely with things without feeling like it can be used against you later. So the community aspect of it is very important. Something I feel like I didn't have when I was a deputy sheriff. And so as a member, you get all of those things. And so, it's wellness training, legal support. Oh, and the other main thing is that as a member, you get access to an attorney for a free legal consultation. You get so many a year. And what I mean by that is you can book a call with an attorney. It's like having your own attorney on retainer available to you for whatever, and it doesn't have to be job related. I've had people ask me, issues with their landlord, like a landlord tenant issue, child custody issues, definitely work related, like harassment type issues. But you just book a call, you get 30 minutes with an attorney to come up with a legal answer. Because also in my 13 years of experience in practicing, or 16 years of legal experiences, I know 99% of all cases don't go to trial. Most issues don't even need a lawsuit. You just need to know the answer so that you can properly speak up or speak for yourself. And that's part of what I want to offer as part of what we do offer with the membership.
And if someone is looking to become a member, or if they're looking to connect with you, where can they do those things?
And my website is myprotectivewellness.com, meaning it's for you. When you log in, you say it's My Protective Wellness. It's something you should guard, strongly guard and take care of yourself. So myprotectivewellness.com, and on there, that's the best way. And sign up for information so that we can keep people up to date on what we have to offer. The membership information is definitely there. We're actually running a special through this month. Normally the membership is $67 a month, but until October 5th, it's $37 a month, and that's for life. So you can get all that information and access to an attorney whenever you need it for $37 a month. And I'm also on social media. My best platform is LinkedIn, actually, or Instagram. So Protective Wellness, or just me personally, Bridget Truxillo, on LinkedIn and Instagram.
Fantastic. I will make sure to link all those in the show notes today. And thank you everyone for tuning into the Mission Driven Made podcast. If you found value in the show today, go ahead and subscribe to the show, then leave us a 5-star review. And Bridget, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be on the show. I know I got tons of value from it today. So thank you very much. And until next time, everyone, stay mission driven.
Thank you, Jake.
And done.